Wanted to do okay, next page. Remember, safety first. Okay. Yep. Once we have the base for our hairbrush. Hello and welcome to Sierra Make. I'm Sierra, and today's project I think is pretty cool. I tried making a hairbrush. Before I explain anything, here are the things that you will need. For materials, you will need scrap wood. Mine was 1 inch thick, 4 inches wide, and 8 inches long. You will also need super glue to glue the bristles in with, and you will need something for the bristles. I used excess filament that I had lying around, but you could also use a coarse hair like boar hair or horsehair. You might also want a paint or a stain and a clear coat for your hairbrush. The tools you will need is a way to cut your wood, a way to sand it, and a way to drill holes in your wood for the bristles. Now on to making the hairbrush. First, you want to draw out a design onto your wood. I used just a random roll of tape that was lying around to get a nice curve for the top of the brush and the bottom of the brush, and then I used a different brush that I was using as a model to make the handle of it. Once you have your hairbrush design drawn onto your wood, go ahead and put on your safety goggles, tie your hair back, and get to cutting out the design. I cut mine out on this bandsaw, but you could use a hand saw or anything else that you have to cut the design with. Once it's all cut out, you want to sand all of the rough edges. Go ahead and sand along the top of the hairbrush and around the handle to really round out the shape. I used a belt sander, but again, you could use just some sandpaper, whatever you have on hand. Sandpaper might end up taking a really long time if you decide to do that route, but go for it. Now that we have the base for our hairbrush done, it's time to sketch out where we want our holes to be and then drill them. I separated my holes about 1/4 inch apart, and then I drilled them with a drill press about 1/4 inch deep. Keep in mind, depending on how far apart you separate your holes, the drilling might take a really long time if you have a lot of holes to drill. My arms started to hurt after halfway. Once the holes were drilled, I just gave it a quick sand on that top bit. It was then that I had a sudden idea. I took the scrap of my scrap wood and made 2 other brushes. With these pieces, I could use them as practice to see how the painting and the gluing bit would go. So I took those 2 extra parts where the handle would be, and I sanded them and I drilled holes. The brushes are finally starting to come together, but now it's time to paint them. First, I taped up my hairbrush so that I could get a clear design on it. Because I was making this hairbrush for a video, I wanted to use something that correlated with that. So I took the cover art of my channel and tried my best to put it onto the hairbrush. So that's what this design is supposed to be. I hope it looks like mountains. If it doesn't, well, then it's zigzags, but whatever. I think it still looks cool. So I took this gel stain that I had lying around in the color Antique Maple and Walnut and rubbed it on with a clean cotton cloth. One of the cool things about stain, if you decide to use it, is that the wood grain shows through. So unlike paint, which basically covers up all that natural wood, you get more of an earthy vibe to your piece. Then I took a thin acrylic black paint and labeled my brushes. Regardless of whether you decide to stain or paint or do nothing to your wood, you probably want to put a clear coat on it just to finish and seal the wood. I used this shellac, which says it's good for small woodworking, but you could use any type of glaze that can go on wood. While the stain and then the clear coat dried, I took the filament scraps that I had and bundled them up. Once I had enough bundles and the hairbrush was dry, it was time to super glue each of the bundles in. This took a really long time, and I ran out of one type of super glue halfway through, so I had to switch from liquid to gel super glue, but both of them worked, so it was totally fine. And eventually I got it all done. Now all that was left was to cut and shape the bristles. Just a quick tip, the longer you make your bristles, the softer the brush will be, versus if it's super short, it'll be a super firm brush. Since there was a lot of excess filament, I took some wire and tried to make a bottle brush. I definitely struggled trying to make this. It was really hard to keep the filament in place and twist the wire at the same time. It felt like I needed like 5 hands to do all of the work, but I think it came out usable. Of course, I had to use one of my brushes to clean up. And here's our brush set. We've got a hairbrush, some random brush, a scrub brush, and a bottle brush. I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. I think it's really cool that I just decided to make a brush with all of this excess filament that I had lying around. And it really made me appreciate the work that goes into hand making certain items. This was meant to be just kind of a fun, quick project, and I totally underestimated how long it would take to make a hairbrush. But I think it came out pretty cool. I like how the bright pink of the filament kind of pops out onto the earthy wood color of the actual brush, and it feels pretty soft. If you thought this was a cool video, please hit the like button, comment down below if I've inspired you to make a hairbrush, and please subscribe because I post new videos every Friday at 3. Thank you for watching. Okay. Earth. Ooh. Oh. Okay. Okay, we'll try that one again.